Picture this. My marriage looked perfect. The Christmas party invitation seemed harmless, and I was just a husband trying to support his wife. What followed exposed buried secrets, brutal truths, and a confrontation that changed how I saw love and loyalty. The moment I learned what my wife had really been doing at those parties, my whole world collapsed. I could hardly believe it when I saw Nicole, my wife of 5 years, shirtless and sitting on another man's lap in the hot tub below. The looks on their faces made it obvious they were doing something intimate. Furious, I pulled out my phone and recorded a short video. I thought about putting on my swim trunks, but instead, I stayed in the room, trying to understand why she had wanted me kept away. Nicole had worked as a secretary at a hedge fund for about a year, and she always seemed truly happy there. Now I painfully understood why. Earlier that week, I had noticed a message on her phone about the company Christmas party, and it clearly said employees could bring a guest. When I brought it up, she tried talking me out of going, claiming I would be bored listening to finance people discuss money. Confused, I asked whether she was embarrassed to be seen with me. She said it had nothing to do with shame. She simply believed the conversations would bore me. Her company also held monthly parties that were normally for employees only, so Nicole often stayed out late or did not return until morning. I had never questioned those nights before. Now I knew what had been happening. I accepted her excuse without arguing. She added that if I still planned to attend, I should make sure my tuxedo was clean, though she doubted I would enjoy myself. On the day of the party, she told me to pack swim trunks. That sounded strange for a Christmas event in December, but she explained that everyone usually ended the night at her boss's penthouse, which had a great hot tub. Then she admitted they did that almost every time. Before we left, she made me promise I would behave. I told her I always behaved, although my tone probably did not sound convincing. I asked why she felt the need to warn me. She said the parties sometimes got wild, and she did not want me getting angry because some of the men could be very handsy. I asked whether I should expect trouble. As long as everything passed the husband test, I said, there should not be a problem. Nicole only smiled, kissed my cheek, and said nothing more. At the main party, Nicole introduced me to her friend Melissa as her husband. Melissa grinned and repeated, "Husband?" Then she said the night would be fun and called Nicole a wild, crazy girl. Her reaction confused me, but Nicole just smiled and giggled. A moment later, Nicole said she needed to mingle and told Melissa to get her some wine. They walked off without glancing back. I headed to the bar, ordered Nicole's wine, and bought myself a beer. I searched for her, but she was nowhere in sight. After 30 minutes, I sat alone at an empty table hoping she would come find me. I watched the crowded dance floor while people passed by as if I were invisible. Nicole had been right about one thing. I was not enjoying myself. My irritation grew because my own wife had left me sitting there alone. After slowly drinking the same beer for nearly 2 hours, I decided I had enough. Since Nicole clearly did not want to spend the evening with me, I planned to go home and leave her with her friends. As I headed for the exit, Nicole and Melissa suddenly appeared with 3 men. One had an arm wrapped around Nicole's waist. Looking slightly drunk, she said, "Oh, there you are," before kissing me. Her lips tasted like tequila and something I could not identify. I told her I was leaving because she had disappeared for 2 hours, then asked where she had been. Nicole turned red and avoided my eyes while the men smirked. Melissa quickly said they had been doing shots. Nicole looked confused by her answer, which only made me more suspicious. I asked Nicole about the shots and pointed out that I could taste tequila along with something else. She brushed off my question and said everyone was going to Daniel's place, where the hot tub was heating up. Then she asked whether I was ready. I agreed, but asked whether I would actually see her there or be abandoned again. She promised I would see her later, then said she was riding with Melissa and the guys and that I could follow. I asked her to ride with me instead, but one of the men grabbed Nicole's hand and pulled her away, making me even angrier. They drove off, and I followed in my car. By the time I arrived, Nicole had changed into a bikini, which confused me. She was in the hot tub with two of the men, later introduced as Daniel and Jason, senior partners at her firm. Despite their positions, they acted like rich fraternity boys. After everyone went outside, Melissa came over and asked if I wanted to meet her later. Surprised, I asked why she thought I would be interested and reminded her I was married. She looked shocked and said she assumed Nicole and I had an open marriage because of how Nicole behaved with other men, especially the way she kissed me earlier. Confused, I asked what she meant about the kiss. That was when Melissa told me Nicole had already slept with Daniel and Jason. My stomach turned, and Melissa's face changed when she saw my reaction. "Oh my God, you didn't know, did you?" she gasped. I admitted I had no idea and asked how long it had been happening. Melissa said it started soon after Nicole joined the company more than a year earlier. The truth hit me hard. My wife had lied to me all that time, and I had never suspected a thing. I asked whether this was what Nicole did at every party. Melissa admitted Nicole had been with Daniel, Jason, and several other men. She apologized, saying she honestly thought I knew. Then she tried to assure me that Nicole really loved me. I answered with bitter sarcasm because that did not sound like love to me. Melissa suggested I go upstairs and change, hoping Nicole might behave with me there. I nearly laughed at the idea, but I went upstairs anyway. That was when I saw Nicole with those two men. No matter how much I loved her, I could not accept another second of it. I decided to confront her. When I headed downstairs, Nicole met me at the bottom and asked why I was not wearing my swim trunks or joining them in the hot tub. I grabbed her arm, led her into a nearby room, and closed the door. I demanded to know whether she had ever planned to tell me about our supposed open marriage. I told her what Melissa had revealed, then showed her the video on my phone of her with Daniel and Jason in the hot tub. I asked if abandoning me at the party had not been humiliating enough. Nicole brushed it aside, saying they were only having fun. She admitted what had happened, but insisted it meant nothing. I stared at her in disbelief and told her it meant everything to me. I removed my wedding ring and placed it in her palm, then pulled her rings from her finger. She asked what I was doing. I told her I found her behavior disgusting and that at that moment, I hated her. I wished her a Merry Christmas, told her I would contact a divorce lawyer Monday, and warned her not to come home. She begged me to stay and kept saying she loved me, but I felt nothing. I told her I no longer cared how she felt. Now that I knew why she had tried to keep me away from the party, I said goodbye and walked out. One of the men, though I could not tell which one, called after me and asked why I was leaving so early. He also said how great Nicole was. I calmly told him she belonged to them now. I left the penthouse and drove home. Nicole flooded my phone with calls and messages, but I ignored every one. Once home, I deleted the texts and blocked her number. After changing out of my tuxedo, I grabbed several trash bags and packed her clothes and belongings. I put everything inside her car, backed it out of the garage, removed the garage opener, and changed the code so she could not enter the house. It was around 2:30 in the morning by then, and I was drained. I climbed into bed and fell asleep almost immediately. The next morning, the house phone woke me. Still half asleep, I picked up and said, "Yeah?" It was Nicole. She asked me to come pick her up, but I told her she was no longer my responsibility. She begged me to talk, yet I said all future communication would go through my lawyer. I told her the car was outside with all her belongings, then hung up. She called back at once, so I unplugged the phone. I had no desire to see or hear from her again. I returned to bed and reconnected it later that afternoon after I woke up. Her car was gone, which brought me some relief. Maybe she finally understood. I went online and began searching for divorce attorneys while reading our state's divorce laws. We lived in a community property state, but we owned no real estate, so that did not matter. We had no children, which meant no child support. Nicole earned as much as I did, perhaps more, so I did not expect alimony. I learned that most divorces there were no fault, but I could also file based on infidelity cruelty, or misconduct. That route would cost more and take longer, but I did not care. I wrote down the information for Samantha Reed, attorney at law, and planned to call her Monday. While I was taking notes, my cell phone rang from an unknown number. Thinking it might be Nicole or one of her friends, I answered. A woman introduced herself as Melissa and told me Nicole would stay with her for a few days. I told Melissa I was definitely moving forward with the divorce. She said she was worried about Nicole, who was a complete mess, crying in her room and close to a nervous breakdown. I felt no sympathy and told her Nicole had done this to herself. Melissa asked whether I still had any feelings for my wife. I said the only things I felt then were hatred and disgust. Nicole had cheated on me for more than a year, then had the nerve to humiliate me in public. As far as I was concerned, our marriage was finished. Melissa kept insisting Nicole loved me. I questioned that and asked what Nicole had done after I left and how long everyone stayed at the Penthouse. What I really wanted to know was whether she had slept with Daniel and Jason again. Melissa admitted they had all hooked up while consoling Nicole after I walked out. She even suggested I might have enjoyed the night if I had stayed. I could not believe what I was hearing. I asked where people like her came from, gave her a curt goodbye, and hung up. After the call, I noticed 2 messages from unknown numbers that had arrived early that morning. Both included videos. One message said, "You missed one hell of a party, bro." I opened the first video and saw Nicole being intimate with 3 men at the Penthouse. I recognized Daniel and Jason, but the third man was a stranger. He looked straight into the camera, grinned, and said, "That's quite a wife you have there, bro." The second clip showed more of the same. It ended with Daniel holding up my wedding ring while Nicole smirked at the camera. Any hatred I already felt only became stronger. I copied the videos to my computer and saved another copy for my lawyer. For a moment, I considered sending them to Nicole's friends and family, but I decided to wait. Samantha's website warned clients to control their reactions because one bad move could damage a case. I took that advice. Neither Nicole nor Melissa contacted me for the rest of that day or the next, which was a relief. I spent the remainder of the weekend removing every trace of Nicole from the apartment. On Monday, I called my boss, explained what had happened, and took a short vacation. He had gone through something similar himself, so he understood and supported me. I called Samantha's office and arranged an appointment for that afternoon. On the way there, I stopped at the bank to separate our finances. I paid off the balance on our joint credit card and canceled it, withdrew half the money, and opened a new account under my name. Samantha explained our state's divorce laws and suggested we consider suing Nicole's employers for alienation of affection, although she could not promise we would win. I let her decide how to handle the paperwork, but asked that Nicole be served at work. After humiliating me publicly for over a year, they deserved a little humiliation themselves. When the meeting ended, I paid Samantha's retainer and drove home. On the way, Melissa called again. "Hello," I answered. She asked me to meet Nicole that afternoon. Following Samantha's advice, I refused and said I needed to keep my distance. Melissa offered to give me Nicole's contact information. After checking with someone, I gave her Samantha's details instead. Melissa made one last attempt to defend Nicole, but I told her forgiveness was impossible and that Nicole would receive divorce papers soon. I ended the call and continued home, stopping only for a 12-pack of beer and 2 packs of cigarettes. I had quit smoking when Nicole and I married, but right then, I needed something to keep me from doing anything more destructive. Soon after I got home, the house phone rang. The caller introduced himself as Daniel Carter, my wife's employer. I recognized his voice from the party, though he sounded far more professional now. I told him I knew who he was and asked what he wanted. Daniel said he understood I was upset about Friday night. According to him, everyone believed I approved of Nicole's behavior at company parties. I asked whether he knew she was married. He admitted he did, but claimed Nicole had told them we had an open marriage, so he assumed I was fine with everything. I pointed out that he had never bothered to ask me. Then I questioned him about the videos sent Friday night. Daniel said sending them had been Nicole's idea. He apologized, claimed he regretted what happened, and asked whether there was anything he could do to make things right. I gave him my terms. First, he would testify against Nicole in court. After that, I intended to kick his balls into the middle of next week and sue him for alienation of affection. I told him that if he truly wanted to make amends, he could accept those terms without arguing. Then I asked whether he had anything else to say. He asked if I was seriously planning to sue them. I said I was, and reminded him that they had broken their own morality clauses for over a year while helping destroy my marriage. Daniel brushed it off, saying it had all been harmless fun and that nobody meant to wreck my marriage. I asked what kind of reaction he expected from me. Did he think I would congratulate them? I told him he must have spent too much time reading ridiculous stories online. Daniel begged me to reconsider, saying we could still work something out and warning that a lawsuit might ruin them. I told him that was not my problem and hung up. Then I grabbed a beer and went out to the balcony for a cigarette. I heard nothing else until Wednesday, when Nicole and the others were served at her office. Melissa called me in disbelief, saying I had not even given Nicole a chance to explain. She also complained about how humiliated Nicole felt. I told her I did not care about Nicole's feelings after what she had done. Then I warned Melissa not to call me again and ended the conversation. A few minutes later, another call came in from a number I recognized as Daniel's office. The moment I answered, he started screaming insults and threatened to kick my ass. He said I had ruined his life and promised to ruin mine in return. I hung up and immediately called Samantha to report the threat. "Good," she said. "I'll file for a temporary restraining order against Nicole and the people involved today. I'll make sure you receive a copy. Just don't do anything stupid." "What if he comes after me?" I asked. "Make sure there are witnesses and do not provoke him," she warned. I understood exactly what she meant. Later that afternoon, someone knocked on my door. Samantha had kept her word. A courier was standing there with my copy of the temporary restraining order. I decided not to take any chances. I bought a small motion-activated camera and aimed it at the front room. I also kept a Louisville Slugger beside the door. If Daniel or any of his friends followed through on their threats, I wanted proof and something nearby to protect myself. Thankfully, the rest of the week stayed quiet. I heard nothing from Nicole, Melissa, or Nicole's boyfriends until Saturday night. I was sitting on the balcony with a beer and a cigarette when the doorbell rang. A second later, someone started pounding on the door. I put out my cigarette and walked into the front room. When I looked through the peephole, I saw Daniel standing there with another man. He kept hammering on the door and yelling for me to open it, claiming I was violating a restraining order. I shouted back that I was calling the police. He only became louder and demanded that I let him inside. I dialed emergency services and explained what was happening. The operator said several calls had already come in from my area and that police cruisers were on the way. She told me not to open the door until officers arrived. I thanked her and ended the call. The pounding continued, and I started wondering whether Daniel would break the door down. I tightened my grip on the bat and waited. Then I heard shouting in the hallway. When I checked the peephole again, 2 large police officers were handcuffing Daniel and the man with him. One officer knocked and identified himself as police. I opened the door. Daniel glared at me while another officer led him toward the cruiser, still shouting threats. The officer asked whether I knew him. I said yes and showed him the temporary restraining order. He read it, spoke over his radio, and told me both men would be spending the night downtown. I explained the whole situation. He thanked me for cooperating and said he doubted Daniel would bother me again anytime soon. I shut and locked the door, then returned to the balcony with another beer. News of Daniel's arrest appeared in the paper the next day under the headline, "Hedge Fund CEO Arrested." Over the following days, more stories reported that several clients were leaving the firm because of its role in destroying employees' marriages. The scandal was starting to hurt the company's profits. My only thought was, good. Going back to work the next Monday was difficult, but I managed to get through the day. About 3 weeks passed without contact before Samantha called. She asked how I was holding up, and I told her I was doing about as well as anyone could expect. Samantha said Nicole had hired a lawyer and requested court-ordered marriage counseling. The judge approved it and ordered us to attend 6 sessions beginning that week. I asked whether the court could really force me to go. Samantha said it could and advised me to attend. If I refused, I could be held in contempt and possibly sent to jail. I told Samantha I had no interest in reconciling with Nicole. She understood, but stressed that I still needed to attend the sessions. I reluctantly agreed. Samantha added that if the counselor believed there was no chance of saving the marriage, she would report that to the judge. I asked whether there was anything else. Samantha then told me Nicole's lawyer had revealed that she was pregnant. I became frustrated when I realized the divorce might be delayed another 8 or 9 months. Samantha confirmed it and warned that if the baby was mine, I would probably be ordered to pay child support. The only decent news was that the judge had approved a legal separation until Nicole gave birth. I made a sarcastic remark, and Samantha gave me the counselor's address before wishing me luck. I wrote the appointment on my calendar. I decided I would make one thing completely clear. Getting back together with Nicole was never going to happen. When I arrived at the counselor's office, I was quickly shown inside. An older woman looked at me over the top of her glasses, while Nicole sat miserably on a love seat. Right away, I had a bad feeling about the entire situation. The counselor introduced herself as Dr. Caroline Hayes and invited me to sit beside Nicole. Instead, I took a small wooden chair positioned at an angle from the love seat and made it clear I was unhappy about being forced to attend. Dr. Hayes said she understood my reluctance but was glad I had shown up. Then she turned to Nicole and asked what she hoped to accomplish. Nicole said she wanted us back together. She talked about the baby and claimed she wanted us to become a family again. I could not stop myself from scoffing. Dr. Hayes then asked what I expected from the sessions. I told her reconciliation was not an option. When I glanced toward Nicole, I saw her flinch. Caroline accepted my answer but asked whether I might reconsider for the baby's sake. I repeated that I did not even know whether the child was mine. I said I would support it if a test proved I was the father, but I would never take Nicole back. When Dr. Hayes kept bringing up the child, I pulled out my phone and showed her the videos sent to me. I wanted her to understand how deeply Nicole had betrayed me. By the time she finished watching, Caroline looked openly disgusted. I pointed out that she was married and asked how she would react if her husband appeared in videos like those. I reminded her that Nicole had cheated on me for over a year and had even flaunted it right in front of me. Dr. Hayes said we needed to focus on our relationship and the coming baby. I replied that Nicole first owed me some honest answers. After thinking for a moment, Caroline agreed. She turned toward Nicole, who stared at the floor with her face burning red. Eventually, Nicole agreed to answer my questions. Caroline gave me permission to begin, so I faced Nicole. I asked whether she had known what would happen on the night of the party. She admitted she had. Then I asked whether that was the true reason she tried to keep me from attending. She quietly confirmed it. I asked whether everyone had planned to humiliate me that night. Nicole reluctantly admitted they had. I then asked if the plan was to degrade me even further once we reached Daniel's penthouse. Looking ashamed, she said yes again. I questioned how long she had been sleeping with men from the hedge fund. Nicole confessed it had started soon after she joined the company. I asked why she had done it. She casually said it felt fun, naughty, and exciting, and that the attention made her feel wanted. When I asked how many men she had been with besides me, she calmly estimated 4 or 5 dozen. I was stunned and reminded her of the risk of sexually transmitted diseases. Furious, I asked if she even knew who had fathered the baby. Nicole admitted she did not. I challenged her for expecting me to raise and financially support a child that might belong to someone else. I told her I no longer loved her and that all I felt was resentment. I even admitted that I was hoping for the worst possible outcome. Nicole and Dr. Hayes both stared at me in shock. Nicole looked ready to cry, but I was still too angry to care. Before I could say anything more hurtful, Caroline interrupted and said I had made my point. She suggested I was throwing away 5 good years of marriage. I rejected that immediately and said Nicole's cheating had destroyed those years, not me. I also argued that the marriage had not been good because the entire last year was built on lies. Nicole had slept with dozens of men and did not even know who had gotten her pregnant. Caroline ended the session and said she wanted to meet with each of us separately before deciding how to continue. We scheduled individual appointments for the following week and left the office. As I headed toward my car, I heard Nicole calling after me from across the parking lot, but I kept walking. In the rearview mirror, I saw her bent over the steering wheel, crying. As I pulled away, I felt a dark sense of satisfaction. For once, she was the one feeling some pain. Later that night, Melissa called me in a rage. She blamed me for Nicole's condition and said Nicole had been hospitalized because of a pregnancy complication. According to Melissa, I had treated her terribly. I defended myself by saying I had only told Nicole the truth, unlike the lies she had fed me for the past year. Melissa asked how I could be so unconcerned that my wife was in the hospital. I told her I simply did not care. She called me a loser and said the least I could do was provide my insurance information. Nicole was still legally my wife, she reminded me, which meant I could be responsible for the medical bills. After thinking it over, I decided to visit the hospital, mostly because I remembered Samantha's legal advice. Melissa gave me Nicole's room number. When I arrived, I spoke with a nurse and handed over my insurance details. I briefly talked with the doctor about Nicole's condition. He explained that pregnancy complications could have many causes, so he could not say exactly what had triggered this one. When I asked how far along she was, he said about 9 or 10 weeks. That meant there was at least a chance the baby was mine. Still, it did not change much for me. The complication also meant there was no longer anything preventing the divorce from moving forward. Once I knew Nicole was stable, I entered her room. She looked miserable, lying in bed with tears in her eyes, while Melissa stood near the foot of the bed. Melissa glared at me, but I gave her a hard look until she finally left us alone. I faced Nicole and told her our marriage was finished. She asked whether I truly hated her as much as I had claimed. I admitted some of my anger had cooled, but I repeated that I would never reconcile with her after what she had done. I told her that every time she went to a store, I now wondered whether she had slept with the cashier. I asked why she had suddenly decided to treat me with such disrespect when I had treated her exceptionally well throughout our marriage. Nicole admitted I had been a devoted husband and lover. Then she claimed the people around her had influenced her, convincing her it was normal for husbands to watch their wives with other men. I rejected that excuse. I told her the divorce was happening and that any attempt to save the marriage would be pointless. Through her tears, Nicole finally accepted my decision and promised to tell her lawyer the next day. I also made it clear that friendship was not an option. She kept apologizing, but my decision to end the marriage had not changed. As I reached the door, I stopped and looked at her for a few seconds. "Goodbye, Nicole." I heard her start crying again as I walked down the hallway. My only thought was, tough luck. Good riddance. A few days later, Samantha called me. Nicole had kept her promise and withdrawn every objection to the divorce. Dr. Hayes submitted a report saying reconciliation was impossible. She recommended anger management for me, and the judge agreed it might help, although he did not make it mandatory. Samantha also secured settlements from the hedge fund, Daniel, and Jason. About a month later, she handed me the largest check I had ever held. "That is after deducting my fee, of course," she said. "Of course," I replied. I deposited the money and tried to move forward with what remained of my life. SG hedge fund, which I had started calling Sodom and Gomorrah, closed about 6 months later. Apparently, its clients no longer trusted the firm's financial integrity. I could not imagine why. Daniel and Jason stayed quiet after showing up at my apartment. Both spent 30 days in county jail for that stunt and seemed eager not to repeat it. Their reputations in town were ruined, so they eventually left for the West Coast to start over. Nicole and Melissa continued living together. They found jobs at a strip mall store that sold women's clothes and cosmetics. I saw them from time to time, but I never acknowledged either one. I remained single and dated casually for the next couple of years. Eventually, I met Grace Turner, a recently divorced woman, and we began seeing each other slowly and without pressure. Like me, Grace had been cheated on in her previous marriage. I understood what that kind of betrayal did to a person, so I supported her however I could. During the first few weeks, we mostly talked, went to dinner, or watched a movie together. I knew she was still vulnerable, so I focused on simple things that made her feel comfortable, like holding hands and taking slow walks through the park. I found her very attractive, but I let her decide when she was ready for more. After a wonderful dinner at her condo, Grace studied me with an amused, curious look. "Do you find me attractive?" she asked with a smile. I told her my interest in her went far beyond her appearance. Wondering why I had not made a move, she teasingly asked whether I even liked women. I smiled back, letting her know there was nothing to worry about. Looking back on those chaotic days, I still wonder whether I handled everything correctly. Could I have chosen a better path, or was the outcome unavoidable because of Nicole's decisions? Life often catches us off guard, tests what we believe, and makes us face truths we would rather avoid. Now I want to hear from you. What would you have done in my place? How would you have dealt with the betrayal and everything that followed? Share your thoughts and let's talk about it. Your point of view might help me see this dark period of my life differently.